record so that way you guys can go back and look at it and then figure out what you want to do later. Yeah. Okay.
Sounds great. Thank you for meeting with us so late in the evening.
Yeah, it's you're welcome. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is just open one of the questionnaires that I have so that way you can see it.
Okay.
And then this is how I would recommend you guys kind of set it up is so I've changed how I do this a little bit, but in general, like your first question is just a text entry kind of question. And you put in like a little bit of a reminder about what you're going to do. I can show you a more recent one where so for instance, this one, we sent out stuff through social media, which is one of the things that you guys have been talking about. So on social media, they just get a link, right? And then they can click on it and go to it. So if you do that, you really have to build all of your consent stuff into the first question. So basically, this is all of the consent information with their like your contact information and everything on it and the project number and all the stuff that goes into consent. And then the second question is what we call consent. And so it's just, basically, do you consent to participate or not? And so that way they click yes or no. And then notice right here, there's something called skip to. So I'm going to move this, I think, maybe if I can. Come on, man, work with me. There we go. So notice this says skip to. So a couple things that you need to know, like if people say, no, I don't consent to participate, you want to have skip logic in it. So notice this guy right here, that's there. If you hit skip logic, then it opens. And for this, if they say no, so if choice, so when you would do end of survey, skip from this question to end of survey. And then if choice is, oh, and I'm clicked on the wrong thing. Hold on, cancel. So if I'm actually clicked in the right, that's one thing about when you're doing this stuff, you have to be clicked in the right box. So like I was accidentally still clicked up here, so it doesn't have a way to do it. But for consent, that's what I was trying to do. So then you come down, you see skip logic, and then it's this question that we were looking to. So from this question, if it's wrong, if it's yes, then great, we go on. And if it's no, then it would jump to the end of the survey, because end of survey if no is selected. And that's really super important to put that, because you can't have people have to take the entire survey if they didn't actually consent to participate in your study, right? Like, and then same thing here, like, are you a certified or licensed athletic trainer? If no is selected, we use skip logic again to send them to the end of the survey, because these are all of our like inclusion exclusion criteria. So you would set up like, do they consent to participate? Then you put in your inclusion exclusion criteria. And if they say the wrong thing, they get skipped to the end. And once they get through all their inclusion exclusion, then I recommend doing different blocks. And I'll show you how to do that in a second, but it makes it easier because like for us, demographics is all of that. And then we go to a question that's signs and symptoms, and we go to a question that's like different stuff. So you can name the blocks based upon what you need, like what they mean to you. So in the survey that I know that you guys were working on before, you had like these kinds of questions, like what are your students doing, or what kind of education classes do you have, or what kind of topics do you have? So if you want to break them into specific groups, sometimes that's easier for like your brain to organize. It's easier for my brain to organize anyway. I don't know about you guys, but so like once you put in all of your consent stuff, so like this one for us is called inclusion. And once we were done, then you just hit add block, and then you add more questions to it. So one thing that I had somebody tell me once that was from a statistician standpoint, that's a big deal, is how you code things. Up at the top here, we labeled them. Whatever you have these labels up here, the people don't see in the questionnaire. This is what your name is. And when you export the data, it's what's going to show up on the Excel spreadsheet. Otherwise, it's going to come out Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, and you're going to have to remember what Q23 means, which is a pain in the ass. So I really recommend like putting in here a title for each one. And again, I'll like open a new one and kind of show you how to do that. And then so hopefully that is helpful. It's okay.
What like if dividing the kind of blocks of questions up into blocks,
Yep.
what will that look like on the user's end?
I can show you it is seamless. They don't even know. Like basically at the end of the block, like you can put in, do I want X number of questions on a page? Like just one question or multiple questions. At the end of the block, it always goes to a new page for them. So if you want all the demographics to be on one page, awesome. And then if you do another block of say like what classes do you teach, then they would only see like things that apply to those classes, end of block, and then some, you know, like I'm saying, like stuff like that. So if there's certain classes you want them to see together, it's a good idea to have them in the same block. And then other like questions they're moving to a different idea or topic, then you can put them in separate blocks. Does that make sense a little bit?
It does. So for them, it'll just look like a set of questions in the next page. And
Yeah, and then they just hit next and it goes to the next page and stuff like that. And I do think it's more manageable for people when they have pages, because otherwise they're scrolling up and down and it's really easy to miss things because they're scrolling and they go past stuff and whatever. So getting back to the demographic stuff, I had a statistician slash epidemiologist like chew me out once. And these are kind of dumb things and you can kind of do what you want, but I recommend, so like for sex, whatever your comparison is should always be 0. And for whatever reason in epidemiology, males are always 0 and females are always 1. Just like true is always 1 and false is always 0. And the way that you do that is you would click on the block to make sure you're there, and then you scroll down. And then you see this recode values right here. So you would click recode values and then it brings things up. So if you click recode, then you can click, otherwise, whatever the first value that you type in is always 1, or the first variable, I guess, variable name or subset. So when we first typed it in, we typed it in male and female. So originally it was coded 1 and 2. So we went in and changed it to 0 and 1. It's super easy. It's not hard, but it just makes it so like in your head, if you always know the thing that's first is a 0, then again, when you're trying to go through and analyze stuff, it's easier because you know what 1 is and you know what 0 is and blah, blah, blah on like that. And it's just a lot easier. You can, if you're in a big hurry to get Qualtrics done, you can do all of this, send it out. And then like I've done that before, where one time I was like, what the crap? Because like I did ages and my mean age for a bunch of high school students was like 6. And I was like, or it wasn't even 6, it was like 3 or something. I was like, what the crap happened? But it was because when I put in 13, it was 1 and 14 was 2 and 15 was 3 and 16 was 4. And I'm like, oh, I'm a moron. So then I went back in and then I changed the ages and I re-downloaded or exported the spreadsheet. And then they were what they were supposed to be. And then it made sense. So things like that, like if you have to go back in and fix them, you can do that. But once you send out your survey, do not change your questions or your answers, because especially if you change the coding for them, it will mess up anybody's answers who have already submitted stuff. So make sure the coding doesn't matter, but make sure your questions and your answers don't change. Does that make sense? Like you need them locked in. And like, I super recommend pilot testing ahead of time. What is your current age? And I said, please type in the number. I would recommend that that's how you guys do it. If you're dealing with high school kids, that's easy because it's only like 6 numbers max that they're going to select, or college, same thing. But you guys are going to be dealing with professionals who could be 22 to 100. And typing all those in and making a drop down for your people is going to be annoying for you and annoying for them. So it's just easier when you're going to have huge ranges to have it be a type in kind of thing. So then it's not so hard. Now, one of the things that we did do with this one, it says, please type in your number. So notice over here, again, there's all these drop downs. So there's certain things in a survey that you cannot force responses on. These kinds of things you can't force responses, but like all of my inclusion questions, I force their responses. And the reason why I do that, and I think the IRB approves it, is because we don't want people skipping questions that are important to determining if they're supposed to be in the study or not. And so I make them answer those questions. And then again, if they answer them wrong, they get thrown to the end of the study, and then whatever, they're done. For the rest of the questions, unless there's something in there that is just crazy critical and your study, like, I don't know, I can't think of a reason, because even if people don't want to answer it, you just throw their data out. But you can put request response in, but you can't force responses for the rest of this stuff. But if you want people, like how this says, please type in a number, well, people might be like 20, spell it out like TWENTY instead of like the number part. So you can come over here and add validation. And then notice what we did is it can either be under content type, so like a length kind of thing, or you can do in here, make it an email address, a phone number, a state, a blah, 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 whatever. And if you hit number, then they actually have to type in a number. They can't spell out the number. So if there's stuff where you really want a number, like say a percentage or something like that, like, and you really just want numbers, then I would do something like this. But notice there's lots of other things that you can do. So if you're trying to make sure that they give you their email address, so that way you can contact them with follow-up questions or something later, and it's a valid email address. Like they couldn't put Missy Frazier at TX State because it needs the .edu at the end kind of thing. Or like postal codes, if they put in something crazy, or US state, pardon me, like all of that stuff can be set. Or if you want to do a date format, you can change it to be, because sometimes if you think that you're going to have foreigners in there, they'll put in, do you guys know how foreigners write their dates? Okay, so we write dates, month, day, year, right? They flip the month and the day. So you'll get people that say like 12/09/2020. What they mean is the 12th of September, not December 9th. Does that make sense? So sometimes, like if you're asking people to put in specific dates, it's a good idea to put in the date format, and that way you specify. And then I usually type in here, like set it up, MMDDYYYY or something like that. So that way they know like specifically how you want it formatted. Yeah, it's a huge problem, Garrett. It can really mess some stuff up, especially if the dates matter. But you can also put in minimum and maximum characters. I usually don't do that, but it's something you can totally do. Okay, so this brings me to a really important thing that I learned the hard way. So if you want a select all that apply, which I believe you guys talked about having in some of your stuff, notice when I hit this, it is called a matrix table. So say you want to select all, like all the classes, all the books, all the whatever it is that they do or whatever like that. What you would rather do is set up a matrix table. And then notice I just scaled it to 1 point. So I called all of these yes, and they will only select the sports that, like, these athletic trainers will only select yes to the sports that they actually cover. And what happens with this, if you set it up this way, is men's archery gets a column and women's archery gets a column and baseball gets a column. And if they select yes, a 1 shows up in that column. And if they don't select it, it stays blank. That is a good thing. If you do like a regular select all, where you could come up here and do like a multiple choice with a like select all. So in multiple choice, there's a lot of different things that you can do with that. But if you do that, what's going to happen is there is going to be 1 column called sports. And under that column, all of these are going to get a number. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, like so on. So if they selected men's archery, baseball, dance, field hockey, in the cell underneath sports, you would get a 1, 3, 6, comma. And I'm going to tell you what, you can't analyze that with any statistical program. It is a huge pain to have that happen. So it's much better to do it this way. And then if you want, after you've already analyzed all the data, or not analyzed it, but exported it, you can add like a new column at the end and just use like an algorithm that says add up all the yeses. So you can get like a total number of all the things that they did. And then like run a frequency of how many times people selected all this stuff. So, but definitely use a matrix table for anything select all, because otherwise you're going to have to go in and make all of the columns yourself on the back end. And it is a huge pain in the butt. So I really recommend that you do it this way. Like I said, I've learned this the hard way, and actually did it like multiple times in a row until I was finally like, I'm a moron. And then I figured out to use matrix tables. If you want, you can put yes and no, like have a yes column and a no column. The only reason why I would recommend doing a yes and no column and making them select both of them is if saying no for some reason is really important to you. But if you really only care if, like, I just use this and this and this, then to decrease participant burden and to make it easier for you, I would just do it this way and have a yes, and then you'll just get ones and it'll roll right through it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and there's nothing like whatever about it, nothing special or anything like that. It's the same thing there. So this is, hold on, let me close this because otherwise it's going to get really long and crazy. So for this question, this is kind of what I was talking about before. We asked them which of these they consider to be signs and symptoms of concussion. So we wanted them to denote which of them they thought were actual signs and symptoms and which of them were not. So it mattered to us for each one of these if they put yes or no as they went down. But again, notice that this is a matrix table. Come on, let me click on it. So that way it means that this is a column on your exported data. This one is, this one is, this one is. So you're not just getting ones and stuff in each one of the columns. For yes, no questions, if you're just asking a single question, kind of like sex, what sex are you? And it's just one question, I think yes, no, I would just leave it as a multiple choice question for just that. If you're asking a question where they have to select all or answer a bunch of things pertaining to the same thing, I would send up a matrix table. Yeah, good question. So single question, like 2 or 3 answers, and they just pick one of them. do a multiple choice all day long. But if it's something like this where they have to read it and answer for each row, matrix table all day. Yeah. Here, I can give you, this is kind of, so like yes, no, true, false questions. We ask a question, they say yes, no. And then to show you again with the recode values. So yes is 1, no is 0. So we just went in, before it was yes was 1, no was 2, because again, it automatically records the first thing is 1 and the second thing is 2. So we just went back in and changed it. And then for this is a 3-way thing. So the way we did it was yes was 1, no was 0, and then somewhat, or sometimes you'll put like undecided or maybe or something like that. Then we make that like 2 or whatever the additional things are. The other thing that you can do is if you have like Likert scaling, then you can score those as well with Likert scaling. But this does not have that. I don't think any of these have it either. So this is another like thing for those of you, if there's anything where you guys want to have them be where they can do like a type in kind of thing. So we asked them, what are all the available methods to share post-concussion care information? And so we gave them things to say yes. And then if they selected others, then they can click in the box to answer this. And so the way that you do that is if you type in other, and you could do it really next to any of them, is allow text entry. But for other, to me, that's the only one where it really makes sense that you would do that. So you type in all of your answers, and then on the answer where you want to allow them to type something in to get additional information. Like if you guys, I know you guys are trying to look at like various textbooks maybe, and if like, if they say, I don't use this, I don't use this, I don't use this, or you guys, I think if I remember right, we're trying to look at like, what guidelines do they use to set up these things, or I think what institutions or something were they using like to follow. You could list out what some of those are and then put other and then allow them here. You would just come and see where it says allow text entry. Then you would click on this, see there's a checkbox, and then they are allowed to type in whatever their answers are, that, and then you'll get additional information. So how this comes out on Excel spreadsheet is each one of these has a column, others has a column, and then there'll be another column next to others where all their type in answers are. So all the type in answers have their own separate column. So that way you could do like a, like one of the word bubbles using that kind of stuff, or just count, like if you think they're all the same kind of thing, like there's ways to run stats doing that kind of stuff too. So this is what I was talking about with Likert scale things. So this right here is a side-by-side kind of setup. So when we look at it, again, they have to answer each one of these because we asked how frequently do they use this question. So then you can say my number of statements was here, and then my number of columns was here. And then within the column, I can add or remove answers. So they give you lots of options here. And then when you come into, sorry, the recode values. So all of these for us never was the worst. The way this was originally scaled was because always is first was 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. But for us, always would have been the best and never was the worst. So we went through and manually reverse scored them. So never was over here. Instead of being the highest score, it's the lowest score. This works if, and this is important, if all of your scoring stuff is scored the same way. But there are some measures, which I don't think you guys are doing this, but maybe. So say like verbal instruction always was amazing. Like you wanted that to be the best. So 3 works. But what if people have found that like written instructions are terrible? And so this always would be a bad thing. So you'd want to reverse score it. Qualtrics within a question like this, you're not able to reverse score within a question. So you would have to go back on the back end once you export stuff and remember to reverse score this using an algorithm. But if all of your stuff is forward or backward scored, like all of these are backward scores, it works perfect for these, because always, if they would have selected always for every single one of these, that would have been, in our mind, a perfect score, because always, like, the more things you use to help people with their post-concussion care is great. So yeah, but these kinds of things work really well. We've already talked about these before, as well as the other type in stuff. And then this goes back kind of to that matrix table where we had like a poor advice, good advice, and they were supposed to answer every question based upon poor and good advice. Yep. So any questions just on the stuff, like this stuff, because I'll show you a couple other things as well. Okay, cool. So I think, oh, maybe we can look at some of her stuff. So are all of your things going to be written the exact same way? Like you guys decided, who did you guys decide that you're going to send stuff to? Just to like department heads? Or are you going to send it to general faculty, or what are you going to do?
I think we landed on sending it out to like the department coordinators,
Oh, yeah.
because one question we kind of came to when we were thinking about that is if we send it out to multiple faculty members at the same program and we get kind of conflicting responses,
Mhm.
we weren't sure what that would look like for data analysis.
Okay. Yep. So this one might not be as helpful then. Because I was just going to show you like how you can, if you need to send out various ones, like if some are going to the coordinators and some are going to general faculty, like you just need to change like your wording a little bit and stuff, but that won't really matter for you guys. Trying to think if there's anything else in this. So here's what I meant about the dates. So if you need them to have a date, I was like, it must be typed exactly as followed, including the backslashes. And so when I did this, again, notice when I put in, so content type, date format, and then I said exactly what I wanted, but notice they do have the European way and then a completely flipped way to do it. So if you're going to say this, you are forcing people to do it a specific way, but you also need to tell them in the question how you're doing that. And I went even so far as to say, like, to kind of do it a crazy way and then to show them how to do it. And I did a far out date because then they're not like, oh, it's just what, like, it makes it easy because they pay attention, like 2050. It's not 2050. I'm like, I know it's not 2050. I did that on purpose. So yeah, so these kinds of things, if dates matter to you, that's how I would do it. So for drop downs, you can do drop downs. It depends upon what you're doing. For things like this where they're pretty short, I think it works really well to do drop downs. But like this was just a select one thing. So we just listed them all out and then they clicked on whatever it was that they needed to do. So display option, display logic. So notice up here, it's what sports are you playing, right? So then what would happen is, say you only want certain questions to be displayed if they answer a question some way. So like, for instance, this question I only wanted baseball and softball players to see it because it's asking about baseball and softball positions. These positions don't exist in football or volleyball or swimming. So you can come in to display question. So if you come here, display question. So what question is it? So I'm saying, okay, which sport are you about to begin? Baseball, if it's selected, or same question, if softball is selected, and then I hit save, because I only want baseball and softball athletes to see this question. Because I have baseball, softball, basketball, cheer, like I did this for all the sports, and it doesn't make sense for them to see all the questions that don't pertain to them at all. So if you have certain questions that you only want certain people to see based upon a previous answer, then you can put that in here. So that way this display logic question helps you do that. Do you see the difference between display logic and skip logic? So like, here, let me close this part. So for instance, there's a whole bunch of questions about injury history and brain injury stuff. If in here, they say that they've never had a head injury, I can make it so they would skip both of these two blocks, because they'll answer nothing on brain injury. And if they've never had a brain or head injury or concussion, I don't need them to go into this block either. So I could actually have a question here that says, if they say no to I've never had any head injuries, it could jump all the way down to the symptoms block. So that way people aren't seeing a bunch of questions that don't don't pertain to them. Yeah. Okay.
What does the data look like that they skip? Does it just not even include it?
No, it's still there because it's part of your exported data. It's just a blank cell. Like that row in those cells is just empty. And you want it to be empty because otherwise, again, it messes up your analyses. So yeah, it's not a big deal. Only the people who see it and answer it will have data in those cells. But the cool thing is, I think cool, it makes it easier for you. So say like you have 50 people answer your questionnaire and you have some of these particular questions. If nobody answered anything, like it didn't pertain to anybody, then I would make a new version of it, but you could save a new version where you delete off all of those columns to make it easier to manage. Or you can just hide those columns so that way you don't, like they're still there, but it's not something that you're having to like scroll back and forth across and stuff like that. So yeah, that can make it a lot easier. I don't think you guys aren't getting their information, right?
Not like their name or any identifying information.
Okay, I didn't know if you guys were like trying to like contact them afterwards, like if you had questions or something. So sometimes you have these questions at the end, just say like, if we have any questions, would you be okay with us contacting you? And if they select yes on like the question up here, then this question here would look something similar kind of thing. Certainly not necessary though. This is another thing that I recommend at the end. So it says, thank you for completing the questionnaire. Your responses will remain confidential and are greatly appreciated. Don't worry about the ID number and name thing. That was for mine. Everybody had names and IDs. But this part right here, the please hit the like double arrow kind of thing button to submit this questionnaire. Some people get to the end and they're like, oh, great. And then they just like close it or swipe it or do whatever without hitting submit. So like the data's there, you just don't have it, which can be annoying. And so I like to put this in the very last question as a reminder, like, because there's nothing that there's in Qualtrics things, there's not a button that says submit. It's just like if you don't hit the next button, like it doesn't it just sits there forever. So, and it doesn't have to be forever. You can make it so that way you can time things out. So for instance, the things that, well, so let me back up. Do you have any questions about any of this stuff before I start going to some of the other things? Okay. So there's all of these guys up at the top, and I'll just really quickly kind of go over them. So workflow is something that in general, I'm going to tell you that you don't really need to use at this point in time. So you'll have survey workflow. Distributions, however, this is where you like send stuff. So you can either do an anonymous link, and like if you guys are going to do like social media like we talked about, this is the link that you put in your social media posts. And you say copy survey link, paste it into your social media posts. Voila, you're good. Now everybody can click on it. Amazing. If you're going to email it to people, so I don't have my thing, so I haven't done this one for a while. So you would have to compose an email. And the way this looks, so actually before I show you guys this stuff, how are you going to distribute this stuff? So I don't need to show you stuff you're not going to do.
I think it'll probably be distributed via email.
Oh, it's going to be email. Okay. So in that case, yep. So in the email, and I'll show you how to do the contact list, but you would come here and then select your contact list. So notice the Missy Frazier contact list. And then I have all of these things. It just goes on and on and on. And so when you go through, you pick different lists. You can either select the entire contact list or specific individuals off of the list. Usually you're trying to send it to everybody, but whatever. Then you can also schedule sending of them, which I love. So you can say send now, like I just want it to blast out, but you can also send reminders and all kinds of stuff. So when you do this, we'd say just for right now, we'll leave it send in an hour. The subject is whatever you want it to be. That's going to help you remember. And then you type in here to email. So if you guys are going to send them via email, then, well, I guess you'll already have to have, like, you're going to have to get your letter approved by the IRB. So your recruitment letter. So that's what would go in here. I'm going to tell you something I probably shouldn't tell you, but I'm going to tell you anyway. This thing right here, the follow link to opt out, blah, 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 whatever, you cannot delete that off. That's not the part I shouldn't tell you. I have to tell it. Well, I shouldn't. You need to know that you can't delete this part off, because if you delete this off, it like makes your email void and you can't send it. Like you have to do this. But one of the things that I've done in a lot of my emails is I've just hit like return, 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 return a whole bunch of times. So it like goes further down. But the only reason why I did that is because I was sending it to a bunch of athletes and they had to have it like as part of their thing and as part of their pre-participation stuff. And sometimes they get weirdos and then they don't want to do that. So anyway, but for this, I recommend trying to have this part. Like I honestly have it like in the middle and then at the bottom sometimes. So that way there's two places where they can click on it. These things will fill themselves in once you finalize the email. Do not type in this stuff. It will self-populate. This information will self-populate. So don't mess with it. For load messages, and I'll show you in a little bit, you can pre-type all these out, like your intro, your reminders, which you guys will want to send reminders, which is why this thing comes in handy. The custom comes in handy. You can pick the day, the time, all that kind of stuff. I highly recommend thinking about what days of the week you're going to send them and what time you send them. depending upon the time of the year and stuff, like if you're going to send stuff on a Friday at noon, nobody's looking at that shit and it's going to get buried in their email someplace and they may or may not ever see it. But Mondays, like in the morning, it's a great time to send it for teachers because they're starting to look at all their stuff for the day. Wednesdays, Thursdays are probably pretty good. Fridays, nope. Don't send anything at the end of the day. Like I recommend sending most things somewhere between 8 and noon. If you're sending them to professionals who are probably only going to be checking, like they're sending to their work email. For me, I was sending it to athletes. So sometimes I'd send it at 5 in the morning, noon, 7 at night, because they check their stuff at different times, but you're dealing like sending them to professional email. So in the first 4 hours of the workday is when I recommend sending them. And Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are probably the best 3 days to do that because it's far more likely that they'll read them in those days. Yep. And then once you're done, you can do either a preview. So you could send yourself a preview email or just send it out to everybody without doing that ahead of time. So then you're not going to do any of that stuff. For data and analysis, so these are some of the answers. In the beginning, it'll be like I'm thinking, and trying to compile all this stuff. When you come over here to import, export, so even on the very, like I strongly recommend that you guys yourself try to take the survey and then you give it to other people to take the survey ahead of time and tell them, I want you to try to put in wrong answers or not follow the directions and see what happens. Because there's always going to be people that do exactly what I just said. Not that they're trying to put in bad stuff, but they don't read the directions. So they put in like the year wrong, or they try to type out the words for their age, or not answer some of your major questions. And you need to know how to break your survey, or how, like, have you made it break proof, unbreakable? Yeah. So before you ever actually send it out, make sure that you have pilot tested the crap out of it, because otherwise you might not find out till like 10 people in that one of your questions was whack, and it's going to mess up potentially like a whole bunch of the rest of your answers or something. Or maybe that's like a super important question and now, you know, like 10 people, you got to throw their data out because it's not reliable. So when you go to export, import, in general, I just do export data. And so notice you can do a CSV, Excel, like you can pick what it is you want to do. So if you know ahead of time, like you're going to use SPSS, you can just automatically export it to that. CSV or Excel, I usually do Excel, but CSV works the same. And then if you want to manipulate it, just open it in Excel. And then it just depends upon what your statistical package you're going to use. I usually download it both ways. So I'll download it once using the choice text and then another time using the numeric values. And the reason why I do that is so that way I can make sure, one, what I think that they are answering, like the words actually are what I think they are. But two, for most statistical packages that I use, it's easier to use the numbers. That's why like that recoding of the values is important. And that's how I figured out like the ages were totally messed up. So I was like, oh, they're not 5 and 6 and 2 and 1, like this is dumb. So being able to check those things like against each other works well. But again, it depends upon what statistical package you're going to use. So I'm hoping this will let me download these. And then I'll do numeric values, download, because you asked to see what they look like. So for results, and this is more to just give you like a quick idea of what the stuff look like. Oh, it's maybe calculating. So like, for instance, date of birth, that one's not very helpful, but come on. So like current age, most of the people were 18 that filled this out. Then some 19, 20, blah, 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 all the way to 30 plus. When we filled these out, these were going to college athletes. This means basically most of them were freshmen that filled this out. Does that make sense? So it just kind of gives you a quick and dirty. And sometimes for presentations, doing screenshots of these or whatever is kind of nice. So you don't have to like do them otherwise, but they'll give you like percentages on a lot of them and stuff like that. So that way you can see kind of what they look like. And so then this table lines up with the one above. Like there were some 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds, and that was the greater majority of them. So it makes sense that most of them said that they're freshmen, but there were also people who said like they're, you know, in their upper 20s and teens, so that there's graduate students in here, or 20s, and yeah, makes sense that they're in that group too, right? This stuff is more just to quick eyeball things. This isn't something that you're going to run the stats from, but it kind of gives you an idea of what your stuff looks like. So really quickly, if you're like, I know most of my people should be true freshmen, but for whatever reason, this great big bar is down here in 50 or seniors. I know something about my answers is messed up, and or my question is messed up or something like that. So I need to go back and check what's going on. Hopefully I checked that out before, you know, 800 people did it, but that's kind of where we're at for it. And then for reports, you can print some stuff out. I haven't set up any reports for this particular one, but you definitely can do that. Questions about any of that kind of stuff?
This is backtracking just a little bit, but in the portion where you're kind of creating the template for what you want the email to look like.
Yeah, I'll go back to that.
The drop down menu with the contacts, how do you create a contact list with like names and emails?
So here, library. And so with a library, notice I have survey, graphics, file, message library. So when I come to my message library, I can make my own like folders to put things into. But see, I have a reminder here, a return to play initial. I have like the first time they are going to do the best scoring survey for a final assessment, part 1, part 2, that kind of stuff. So you come in here and you just click new message. And I'm just going to click on this one. It's a reminder. So you type in like what you're going to do. So it's a reminder. And if I hit edit, up here, you can select what kind of email you want it to be. So I want it to be a reminder. I could put it in a category like one of these guys over here. I just didn't do that. My description, this is how, when I'm trying to look for it, this is not what the people are going to see when they get it. This is what I see. So I know like, this is reminder 1 for this. And I wrote this on this date, because if I like write new versions of it or something, I want to make sure I send out like the most recent version. And so then you just type out like, as a reminder, I'm not going to give you the whole great big long email again. I'm going to be like, hey, you need to complete this. Please do it in this amount of time, blah, 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 whatever. And then I put my information at the bottom. And again, this stuff just automatically fills itself in with whatever survey, because this email, this reminder email, isn't specifically linked to any one of my surveys. It is a reminder email that technically I could use for any of my surveys. This is a pretty specific email though, hence me putting like 2018 Texas State return to play reminder 1, and it's going to both males and females. So I was trying to be really like specific, so I don't try to attach it to like a baseline email or something like that. But you can type all of these out and have them be whatever. And then notice how I said like I hit return a lot to put this towards the bottom. Yeah, you don't have to do that. And honestly, for the people that you're doing it for, it probably doesn't matter. For me, I was like, because otherwise all the athletes would have clicked on it and then it would have been a huge pain because it was part of their pre-participation stuff. So they had to do it. So yeah. But you can set them up. So you would just do new and you can pick the invite email. So that would be the first one that you're really sending out. Or general message, reminder emails. Really the main ones that I use are the invite emails and the reminder emails. And then you just type in whatever you want the title of it to be so you can find it. So if you're going to send out one invite email, just call it invite email, ATs, I don't know, whatever. And then when you write reminder email, maybe you're going to have like a couple different reminder emails. So reminder number 1, reminder number 2. I wouldn't get too crazy about it though. Like if you're sending out a lot of reminders, probably it's fine to have the same reminder, unless on the last one you want to be like, this is our final reminder. Please, we would like to have you get it done by this date, or this is when we're going to close it or something like that. But if I do recommend in your emails, if you're going to send out reminder emails and you're really getting close to trying to close your study, that you put that information in the email, because they don't know, like, okay, they want me to fill it out. I'll go back to it when I have time. We'll say you want to close in October and they're not going to have time until like the middle of November to fill it out. Well, they're not going to make time to fill it out till the middle of November. But if they know that you're going to close it on October 31st, they'll hopefully make time before October 31st to complete it. So don't assume that your people know. Maybe they want to participate, but they don't know that there's like a hard deadline to when you're going to cut it off. So if you're going to have a hard deadline, I would at the very least put it in your last reminder email and make sure you leave it open for at least a week or something after you send that email. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah. So then no, that's not really where I want to be, but so you can put in lists of people. So I'm just going to click on this. Okay, go back. So you can do create a list. So you can say, create a list of selected contacts to send surveys and distribution. So you can do this kind of thing. Type in, I don't know, whatever, test. Hit confirm. And then notice it'll let you upload a file. If you have names and email addresses, I strongly recommend that you do it this way, because otherwise you're having to type all that stuff in and it's a huge pain in the butt. And if you put an extra space somewhere, or you put a comma instead of a period or whatever, it's not going to pick up on it. This needs to be in a CSV file if you're going to upload it. And it's usually last name, first name, if you have them. If you don't, that's okay. And email. The email has to be a legit real email. And then you just upload it here. If you want to give people study numbers ahead of time, you can also put that as a column in your CVS. But since you guys are trying to keep it anonymous, probably you're just going to upload something that just says email. And that's 100% okay to do that. So you would just hit upload a file. This right here, I recommend how it says download a sample template. I would download this. So get this far, hit download sample template, keep it on your computer, and then just hit cancel till you have it all, and then come back here and then just drag and drop your file once you're done in here, and then you're good. Super easy. That way you can make it in Excel on your own computer, save it as a CSV. You're good. But notice it says the UTF-8. So it needs to be this format, a CSV of a UTF-8. Important that you make it that way. If you try to put an Excel file in here, it will not accept it. So CSV UTF-8. Okay. And then once you drag them in, It's all in there. It won't let me hit next because I'm not putting a file in there. But if I did, if there's errors, it'll say, nope, can't do it, error, because you probably have something in some cell that's not part of it or whatever. So it'll try to help you figure out what's going on. Otherwise, you can go back and try to type them all in. So manually input them. You could just manually put in all of their email addresses. Again, it's a huge pain in the butt to do that. So I recommend, if you already got an Excel file full of people's email addresses, just import it. But if you really just want to type them in, you can also do that. Okay. Okay. So yeah, and then if you have more than one contact list, you can add them here too. So that's the people, how you send them. Let me go back. A couple other things that we didn't go. I don't know if she did it anymore. So I'll do this one. Okay. See these things over here on the side? So when I click this, it's just regular stuff on the side. It's formatting and all the things that we talked about. And if I open a question, more stuff opens up. This is just the basic one that's always open. If I click the next one, so say you want to rearrange your blocks or make it so that way they're randomized, you can do it here. I'm not sure that for your guys' particular study, it matters that anything's randomized. For me, I was having them fill out a bunch of behavioral measures and I didn't want all of them to fill out the aggression first because that might mess up what they answer for anxiety and blah, blah, blah. So they had a randomized order of all of these. I don't know that that really matters to you. For embedded data, you guys won't have embedded data because you're not trying to track anybody. So what I'm showing you here is mostly like if you just randomly want to move a block or something, you can do that here, but most of the other things aren't going to really be important to you. For the look and feel, this is where you can come in and like make it be Texas State stuff or have it be blank or something like that. You can change like the layout, how you want your questions. Like, see, these questions are all gray, these questions are white, like that kind of stuff. So you can change like what your questions look like. So for instance, it's clicked on this one right now. So like that's kind of what they look like. But if I click this one, it changes how they look. So as you change this stuff, like you can change it to be whatever you want. I don't know so much that it matters. Some people really think that that stuff matters, but you can totally change that. The next button, you always need the next button, but you might not want to let them be able to go backwards. So if you don't want them to be able to do that, you can take that stuff out. A lot of times people like having a progress bar. So that way people know how much longer they have to go to finish it. Because sometimes people are like, oh my God, I feel like I've been taking this forever. And they have one question left, but they stop because they're like, nope, they said 10 minutes and it's at 9:58. I'm stopping. And then like, but they only had one question left. So you can change. Do they have a progress bar? Is it just text? Is it without text or is it verbose text? So like survey completion and all that kind of stuff in there. You can put the progress bar at the top or the bottom. You can limit it to the number of questions per page. So if you want 1, 2, 3, whatever, you can change that. And then if you want to put headers and stuff in here, you can do that as well, or footers. Most people, that stuff doesn't really matter. So you can change your colors to be whatever you want them to be. Right now, they're basically set at Texas State colors. For motion, I don't do motion in my stuff. They're hard enough for people to look at anyway. So I'm not trying to have like questions or answers swoop in or out. For logo, you can have the Texas State logo, you can change it, you can do whatever you want. You can have it floating, you can tell it where you want it to be or how big you want it to be. And then for background, again, you can change your color and do all that kind of stuff here. So if you really like something that's really aesthetically pleasing or you want it to look a certain way, this look and feel is where you want to like come in and do that kind of stuff. Then, oops, don't save changes. Then if you come to the bottom one, this is like kind of just your general options. So I'm assuming you want your stuff in English, but you can change it to other languages if you need to in here, and it will actually attempt to translate. I'm not going to promise that everything translates perfectly though, so I would just do it all in English. That's my best recommendation. The survey name that's going to show up in your search results and stuff. So I would put what you want like people to see in like the subject line or whatever here in the display name. You can put something in the survey description. I didn't. This is just what comes in. You don't have to put anything in there. You can show the question numbers if you want. And then if you want, you can have like them evaluate your stuff. So you'll see as you fill it out, it'll tell you like, it's kind of like a Likert scale of 0 to 100 of how good they think your survey is, the readability and everything else. This is where I'm getting to for your survey responses. So 1, do you want a back button on or off? If you want people to only be able to move forward and not go backwards, you need to shut it off. Allow respondents to finish later. I like to leave this on because otherwise, like if they get in a hurry and they have to close it, if they try to open it again, it'll make them start from scratch. And people often don't like that, so then they won't respond. So if you let them do this, when they click on the link that you sent them, as soon as they click on it, it will let them pick back up where they left off. And people like that. I recommend it. You can put a custom error message in there. I wouldn't worry about it. Incomplete survey responses. So what should be done with incomplete survey responses? Do you want incompletes to be sent to you or not? For me, like I said, I've had people that have completed the entire thing and just not hit the send thing. So I want it to record it and make sure that data comes to me. But you guys might decide if it's not a complete data set, I don't ever want to see it. So you can say that. How much time should pass before they're considered incomplete? So like this, if you don't allow them to finish later, if you have off, it might not even give you that question because they have to finish it all in one sitting, and most people aren't going to leave a survey or any browser open for 2 weeks. But you can change it 1 hour. Like you have to answer it and finish it now, or it's going to send. Like, so you can change it to whatever you want. Like you could let it be open for a year. I don't recommend it. You guys are trying to graduate, but you can. Which respond activity determines when the timer starts? Just because they opened it doesn't mean that they started it. So pardon me, I use last time they edited a response, because say I open it today and this is where it kind of gets sketchy. So I open it today and say it's supposed to time out in 2 weeks. And if you, this is my warning to you, if you're going to only send reminders every 2 weeks, don't have your stuff time out in 2 weeks, because otherwise what might happen is they open it the first time they get it, they don't complete it, they just close it, and it's going to time out before they get the reminder. So you're going to get a blank survey sent to you, whereas after they get the reminder, they might have completed it, but now it's going to be locked down and closed, and they're not going to be able to open it because it's sent. So if you're going to send, like you could have this be much longer, like months, whatever you want it to be. Think about that, because you don't want that overlap and to lose people needlessly. survey availability, leave survey open to collect responses, or you can select a specific date that you're like, all our data has to be in by this date. So if they haven't hit submit, it's just gonna pull in their data at the end. And for grad students, I often recommend that because then it's done and you don't just have random data trickling in. Again, does not have to be a thing though. So it's kind of up to you. For security, a lot of times, so for me, I didn't prevent multiple submissions because they were taking the same survey over and over and over. You guys might want to click this one on because it prevents ballot stuffing where one person might send in the same survey. I don't know why they would want to do that, but they could complete the survey 6 times and you have the same person filling it out 6 times. And that's not what you're trying to have. However, if you're hoping like the coordinators have all of their faculty fill it out, they're going to be using the exact same survey link. So you might want to leave it off then, because otherwise the first person that submits it, that link won't work after that gets submitted. So you need to think about how you're going to do it. You guys won't have this bot detection. That might be, I mean, if you want to do that, you can sure do it. If you're actually sending it specifically to people's addresses, the chance of a bot filling your stuff out isn't very good, but you could definitely do that. And a lot of these are just extra things that you can add in if you want to. For post survey, you can put in your own thank you message. So back in the messages place, you can type out a thank you and then select which thank you that you for sure want to put in here. And load your stuff and do all that kind of stuff. Scoring quotas, translation. Yeah, that's all kind of basic stuff. So to answer your question from previously, where's it at? All right, so this is what it looks like. So the one that we were just in, notice it has what I named all of them. And then underneath it, it has different stuff. So not so much here. These are all the built-in things. So like duration in seconds, this is how long it took people to do it. If it took somebody 3 seconds to complete this, yeah, they didn't actually complete it. That's pretty much a no-go on that one. But what you'll see is I come here, my label for it was age, but it tell you what was the actual question underneath it. So in the beginning, it might be helpful to you to leave the second and third row here. When you're going to analyze the data though, I would save a new version and delete these 2 rows off because it will straight up mess up your ability to do any of that stuff. Remember what I said about multiple choice select all? This is what it looks like. Don't do this. This is a bad idea. So like I said, make sure you put them in the matrices, and then it would have been for football. It would have had all the positions lined out like that. But like these are cheer. See how these are blank because they don't apply to these people and maybe none of the people. Ligament, like these are all injury things. So a lot of people didn't answer these. It wasn't until like way late in the data set, because I changed them again, that you're going to start seeing people fill them in down low. It's a really big data set. I didn't show you most of the questions in it. So these are the ones that they skip. When I had the skip logic, if they said no to something, then it skipped things. So like for instance, concussion history. Have you ever had a concussion? If they said no, it kicked them out of all these questions and they went to the end and then they came over here to symptoms. So all of these are empty because they said no. Only the people who said, yes, I've had a concussion were shown any of these questions. Does that make sense how that works? And then here is like symptoms. So they just rated their symptoms for all of these things as they normally are. And so you can see like this person, this is probably my 3-minute person, didn't answer this stuff. So then you can decide on the back end if you want to delete the data out or not. And then multiple other versions. The weird thing about this data set is, remember how I said that I randomized how these were seen? So these people probably didn't see the BPAC first. They saw the GAD7, and then they saw the BIS, and then they maybe saw something else over here. And then they got tired of doing it. So then they quit answering some of these. So it kind of like, it looks like they were jumping around. Really, they were answering them in order, just not everybody was given them in the same order. You're welcome, Cambry, sorry. Okay. Yep, but so this data set is only, it only makes it to YB columns. So, 26 times 26 times whatever. It's like, I don't know, 1,500 columns or something like that, I think. Yours will not be this big. It's like 1,500 columns and like 880 rows. So it takes me a while to clean my data. Your guys's will not be that bad, I don't think. Questions about any of this stuff? And then two, like I said, this is a numeric one. I can show you. I think this is a numeric one. Whoa. Oh yeah. So see how the numbers are in the other one? These are like freshmen, true freshmen, soccer girls. The years were just years, but now these have like actual words in them. So this is the other version, which for me doesn't work so good when I'm analyzing data. So I just use this as reference, but not as actual, like, I don't analyze data this way. All right. Hopefully that's helpful. Is there anything else like you guys have questions about or anything like that?
And I can see going through this, like how using the matrices to label the columns is extremely helpful.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. Because otherwise, like I said, I've had to go back through and like add all the columns and figure out what the columns meant. And then especially when you have really big data sets, it takes a long time and you have to like double check yourself multiple times to make sure you did it right. So really don't do select alls that way. Definitely do it the matrices and just make it a yes column or yes, no column, however it is you want to do it. And it's much easier that way. Yeah. Anything else that, I mean, you guys might run into things where you're like, oh yeah, I don't know this or whatever. So you can reach out to me and let me know. But part of it is trial and error. There's really good Google examples on there too. So you can sure like try to Google stuff, but I think once you get going on it, you're going to figure out what you know and don't know. And like I said, I'll share this video link with you so that way you guys can go back and look at it if you need to. And that might be helpful to just see some of the questions and formats and stuff. When are you hoping to send it out?
I think we decided on around having it hopefully sent out by September.
Okay. That should give you enough time to get through the IRB then. Yeah. Okay.
We're hoping to have the protocol submitted by, I think that the IRB board meets like first week of July. So we're hoping to have it submitted by then so that hopefully it'll get through in the month of July.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. The sooner, I think it has to be submitted by the 1st. Maybe it's a little bit later than that. I don't know. You have to have it submitted before they view it. The sooner you get it submitted, the more likely it is that it'll get reviewed. Yeah, but this won't go to full board. In my mind, especially because it's healthcare professionals asking about healthcare stuff, so education things. So this should actually be an exempt slash expedited study, which means depending upon who looks at it, when they look at it, it could get theoretically approved in like 24 hours. Because you're not collecting any personal information from people. Yeah, and it's about your rating education systems. And so as you go through the IRB and fill that stuff out, it's really important that you look at the questions, because one of them asks, like, are you assessing education programs? You need to put yes on that one. And that'll automatically put you, and you'll put an anonymous survey. Those two things together, I think, will put you into that category. I'm not saying you'll for sure get accepted that fast, but it's possible. The sooner you get it in though, the better. Yep. All right. Anything
Yeah.
else?
No, thank you so much, Dr. Frazier, for taking the time to do this. This was super helpful. And thank you for thinking ahead to record it as well.
Yeah, I've learned that people are like, yeah, I got it. And then they contact me later and they're like, I remember 10% of what you said. Like, cool. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much for helping us with this.
You're welcome. All right. Well, let me know if you guys need more help, and I'm happy to meet with you. And otherwise, I'll send this out to the email. And yeah, good luck.
Thanks so much.
You bet. Take care.